Okay, so part two of this little thing that I'm doing is kind of about technique. And I have notes for this one because I recorded it earlier and it was disorganized. So, um, there's a basic reggae thing which is like this. And that's extremely boring and no one plays it that way. And there's lots of different things that people do to kind of, I call them variations, I guess. But I've made a list of what they are so you can kind of learn them separately and try to incorporate them. So the first thing is mutes, which is this is an extremely fundamental thing, and all you're doing is muting the chord between I guess switching to another chord. Like you're not just sitting there like this. It's and the way I do that, at least, is I release pressure with this hand, so it's still on the strings, but it cuts the sound. And then I also mute with that part of my strumming hand. And between each chord is a muted down strum. And if you're muting with this hand, you really don't need to pull this one off, but I've kind of done it out of force of habit, and you know, it's not a big deal. It's not like this huge problem that needs to be fixed. That's just what I do, but you can mute with just this hand and you're completely fine. So on each like downstroke in between, just make sure you have those in there and that they're muted, because that's like a fundamental thing to feel the music and be able to do other stuff, which I also have on this list. So the next thing is hitting the root note before each chord. It's not something that must be done, like the muting. Pretty much everything after here is optional after the muting. But this is something you can do when you're playing something slower that needs variation, or if you're like playing not with a band. Just before each chord, hit the root note. And a way of keeping that clean, basically not sounding like this, is release pressure with all your fingers except the one that's holding the root note. So like these three, keep those touching the strings but not pressed down, so it's muting those, so that way you won't accidentally make extra sound. And then when you're gonna play the chord, you just press them down. So that's something you can do to add a little bit of variation. Now the next thing is sliding between chords. So here's an example of kind of what that would sound like. So instead of just like muting or pausing between each chord, you slide. And that little thing I did, I'll be teaching that in a minute, so don't worry, I guess, if you want to learn that. But the sliding, that's something you can do from like a whole step, or you can do it halfway, which can sound really cool. It's just instead of sliding from the one chord to another, you go in between and you go that way. You can also do it like descending. So that's another thing you can do. And then the probably the biggest thing on this list for reggae is this. It's just that little muted downstroke and upstroke on the actual chord. So I can't really teach the timing of that. You just kind of do it between chords, and I guess you do it like a little early. Like instead of going, you go. So that's all that is. It's just a mute and an upstrum. And then this is the last thing, is this. And I don't know what to call this, but all you're doing, and I don't know if there are other ways of doing this. I just heard Bradley Noel doing this, but it's basically if you have a chord rooted on the A string, you play it, and then you move your pointer finger to the next chord, because you're about to descend. It only works, or it only seems to work, between chords that are like on top of each other. So like D and A, or like E and B. Ah, my dog farted. Oh my god, it stinks. Okay. You pull the chord off. Or you don't pull it off. You let go of it and you upstrum to the point where you just have this bar. And then you hammer on the rest of the lower chord. So I hope that made sense. But that's just something that I noticed was being done. So those are a few basic techniques you can use to vary your playing. And I hope this video helped. And if you have any other suggestions for songs or aspects of reggae that you want me to teach, please leave them in the comments below. And I'll see you next time.